And thinking about that video being played before a gallery of everyday citizens?
I definitely think things could have been handled differently. I'm happy I wasn't there to witness everyone watching that. To the world imagery, I was not made to be a victim. I was a mockery. And that was very difficult to digest.
Welcome back to The Vibers, the Blue Heart Gang. And if you're just getting here for the first time, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, click those notification bells so that you can know every time I go live or when I do another upload. Because now we are in a relationship and we got to get into this.
We're speaking on the topic of social media. You're always on social media. We recently saw you do a cover. Was it the R. Kelly cover? I believe it was the R. Kelly cover. Yeah. What made you want to choose that selection out of all?
And I heard it playing in his system. And I said, what is that? And I said, was that Trapped in the Closet? He says, oh, it's just the music. I was playing along with it. And we started talking. And the lyrics, that just added my story to his music. It's actually the great Rodney East playing that music. I love R. Kelly. I believe in him. I believe in him as a person. I'm a mother. I'm a friend. I'm a Christian. I have a part of my heart and mind that doesn't always hone in on the bad, whether it be proven or not, and just stay there. None of us wants to waddle in the bad. No one would even want to believe that some of our bad is as bad as it is. But when people are in the limelight, they hold them higher for some reason and then accuse them even longer. And as a sister, as a covenant sister, I've prayed with him before in private, and I've had moments with him before this part of his life. Why wouldn't I reflect his talent? And so it wasn't so much intentional or going after that. It's just that I was enjoying his music. And I said, Travis, let's do it. And so 1 million people liked it in less than 24 hours, which speaks a lot about his genius because, and then paired with mine, maybe that's what made it happen. But I'm glad we did it.
Y'all, there is something deeply disturbing about the way parts of the Black community, the Black church in particular, continue to lift up the worst of men, even when children are harmed in the process. And yes, I'm going to say this very plainly. Their behavior is diabolical, demonic. Do you hear me? The church is demonic. We have watched pastors, gospel figures, and respected good church ladies publicly pray for the artists while never publicly acknowledging the children who were harmed. Women in positions of spiritual authority, including figures like Kim Burrell, R. Kelly, they offer grace and prayers and protection for R. Kelly. And it raises a very simple question. Did anybody pray for Reshona? Did anybody intercede for her healing? Did anybody publicly or intentionally with the same energy give her intercessory prayer and victim status? Or was the spiritual concern reserved only for R. Kelly and his talent? And let me clear something up because nuance absolutely matters. Yeah, he's talented, exceptionally so actually. He wrote and performed some of the most defining songs of an entire generation. His music played at graduations, weddings, school dances, everything. That part is all true. But here is what we rarely pause to consider. What does that public praise of this man sound like to a survivor? To past victims watching their abuser be called misunderstood. To present victims learning what silence buys you and what speaking costs you. And to future victims quietly taking notes. Because when the culture rallies around the artist, the burden doesn't disappear, it just shifts. The stigma is always going to land on the minor or the victim, and the scrutiny lands on the survivor. The discomfort lands on the person that told the truth, but the man is reframed as the quote unquote real victim and the one who needs grace, the one who deserves protection. This is why so many victims never tell, not because they are unsure of what happened to them, but because they are certain of what will happen afterwards. Y'all, let me calm down. But we already know they get doubted, they get dissected, they are blamed for not being perfect victims, while the artist or whoever the popular person is mourned, defended, prayed over, and, literally remembered as a hero. So this imbalance is not accidental. It's a cultural thing, and it is a spiritual malpractice, and it teaches a devastating lesson. and that is that talent can outweigh harm, and that men are redeemable faster than children are believed, and that silence is safer than truth. When we rush to protect the person that is considered gifted, what we're teaching is that the people that they wound are not good enough for God, and that God is not for them. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and get into the excerpts of the interview, as well as a little background on this whole situation.
It was a couple of weeks before your 17th birthday. You say, Robert told me the copies tapes of 14-year-old me were beginning to be sold on the streets of Chicago and across the country. Your reaction to that when you think about hearing those words from R. Kelly, that this tape is out there, and you were 14 years old?
I was empty. I was very hollow inside. I was very confused. Didn't know what to expect. And I was embarrassed.
Why not tell the truth in 2002 or 2008 when there was finally a trial after 6 years?
That's one of my biggest regrets, not telling the truth. But again, when I have been trained and groomed since I was age 13, I started believing the lies that I was telling. It was very foggy and unclear on what I really felt versus what was right or what was wrong. And even in moments where I despised Robert, I still lied for him.
When I look back at that trial, this idea that people who were not part of the jury were able to see some of that video. Mm-hmm. And the jokes that came from the video, because we're talking about seeing a person at the time, not knowing who it is, mm-hmm. for sure, being urinated on and talked about. And it's almost like, oh my gosh. Do you look at even the justice system as not protecting you to some extent? I mean, thinking about that video being played before a gallery of everyday citizens?
I definitely think things could have been handled differently. I'm happy I wasn't there to witness everyone watching that. To the world imagery, I was not made to be a victim. I was a mockery. And that was very difficult to digest. It was very disheartening to know that my body was just being displayed and tossed around. And, when I look back on it, I wish things could have been done differently, but those are all of the things that I had to internalize.
Diddy and Kelly, who are being stars in front of the world, they may have their details and whatever the news or whatever may reveal. They're my brothers.
I am a Chicago native, and I was living in the city when the R. Kelly scandal first broke. Before the infamous tapes, before the national outrage, before the documentaries, the hashtags, and the courtrooms. And let me be clear about what time felt like. People were already exonerating R. Kelly way before anybody seen a tape or he went to court. And they were not doing this quietly, and they were not even cautious about it. It was very, very open. This wasn't something whispered about in corners. It was talked about on buses, in salons, actually my salon to be exact. This was happening at family cookouts and on radio shows, and the tone wasn't, let's wait and see. It was, they lying. They trying to take a black man down. Them girls are fast. And this is all before the tapes ever surfaced. This is so important because it tells us something uncomfortable about the culture before evidence ever enters the room. The reflex is never in our communities to protect children. It's always to protect an image, to protect a legacy of some man, a hometown hero. And Chicago, my city, was ground zero for that loyalty. Even then, there was a quiet understanding that something wasn't right, but the social cost of saying it out loud, it was way too high. You weren't just questioning a man, you were questioning the culture, the music, the pride that we had, the idea that one of quote unquote ours couldn't possibly be guilty. So people chose denial. It's still happening right now, decades later, and it feels painfully familiar because the same instincts are showing up again. The suspicion, the defensiveness, the urge to interrogate the woman instead of the pattern. What people need to understand is this: This backlash didn't start with a book, it didn't start with the CBS interview, and it damn sure didn't start with social media. It started years ago when the community decided emotionally, not legally, that R. Kelly was innocent no matter what. And once a narrative like that hardens, every single survivor who speaks after that becomes the problem. For years, the public knew her only as Jane Doe. And that was a label that froze her in time, as if she would forever remain a 14-year-old girl trapped in the worst moment of her life. But Jane Doe has a name, and her name is Reshona Landfair. And today, she is no longer a child frozen in someone else's narrative. She's a grown, capable, self-possessed woman who survived what most people would not. A lot of people really do believe that because R. Kelly was acquitted, that meant that he won the case. But not quite. So exactly what happened, for the record, and those of you that don't know, is that the tapes were absolutely viewed in court. There were teachers there, her coach, other students, even her parents. But Rashana, even though it was her in the tapes, for whatever reason, both her and her parents refused to identify her as herself in the video. And that is the only reason that R. Kelly was able to beat that case. Now, for whatever reason she did that, I'm sure she's going to cover it in her book, as well as the many interviews that she's probably going to be doing. But understand this, whatever happened back then, she was a 14-year-old child, and I am with you when you say her parents should have protected her instead of themselves, because even after all of this took place, even after the tapes were dropped, even after they knew that this man did what he did to their daughter, they continued to hire themselves out to work for him. Rashana did not just endure abuse. She endured abandonment by parents who failed to protect her, by a system that failed to intervene, by a culture that turned her trauma into entertainment. While degrading tapes of her abuse circulated across the entire world, she had to grow up watching adults debate whether she was fast or whether she knew what she was doing, whether she was somehow responsible for what was done to her. As a freaking minor, her abuse became a punchline, literally. Remember when Dave Chappelle built entire routines around her humiliation? Crowds laughed, networks aired it, and a child's trauma was repackaged as humor, with no disclaimers, no empathy, and no concern for the fact that she still had to grow up in the aftermath of all of that laughter. Listen, between the church, the community, and the entertainment industry, there is no real safe space for victims. The church is going to want to forgive the villain. And I get that. They've twisted scripture in a way to make anybody, no matter how bad they are or what they do, forgivable, right? And look, that's between you and your God on if you forgive a person for doing these things, okay? And don't come judging me because I'm not in R. Kelly friendly space. I don't want to hear it. The community is going to prioritize image, right? And loyalty, especially to Black men. Okay, that it is what it is. When it came to Bill Cosby or any Black male doing anything, from Kobe Bryant, and yes, Kobe Bryant, if you read the transcripts, dude did what the lady said that he did. You know, it's just a shame though, because if anybody calls any man out, especially if he's Black and male, you're looked at as someone that is a betrayer of the community. So do we wonder or question why this is such an underreported crime, or why victims do not feel safe coming forward, or why sometimes it might take decades for someone to speak about what traumatized them? And let's not even talk about how the entertainment industry monetizes trauma, but they shield the person. In all three of these spaces, church, community, and entertainment industry, victims are accepted only if they're convenient, calm, and not disruptive. The moment the truth comes in, it threatens power, money, and reputation, so all the support is going to disappear. This is why so many victims don't come forward. Not because they don't know what happened or they're unsure. It's literally because they know that y'all are not going to support them, and that the system is going to first protect itself. Let me know what y'all think about this situation down in the comments. And if you like my commentary, please click like, comment, and subscribe. And if you don't like it, you can still comment, you can still subscribe, because you are bound to return and find something that will entertain you or be of intellectual benefit.